All right, thanks so much, Angela. Well, this week, two 16-year-olds were arrested for murder in Indianapolis, both allegedly using a gun to shoot and kill the victims.
So this really raises the question, how are these kids even getting their hands on guns? Our Chase Houle looked into it today and learned a lot of these guns are being stolen or bought illegally out on the streets.
I also learned that Indiana is its own source state. So what does that mean? Well, according to the ATF, it means Indiana contributes to its own gun problem. So much so that the ATF tells me 70% of the guns they collect from crimes were legally purchased right here in Indiana. Behind lock and key at the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives office are hundreds of pieces of evidence and dozens of guns used in crimes.
These guns are being purchased locally and they remain locally majority of the time in crimes.
John Nokes is the assistant special agent in charge for the ATF in Indiana and Ohio. He says 11% of the guns they collect in crimes were legally purchased within a 3-month span. In a year, he says, it's about 30%.
That's significant to us because that is a direct transfer from the legal commerce into the hands of people who aren't supposed to have crimes or aren't supposed to have the firearms, and they're committing some type of crime with it.
He says teenagers, felons, and people who use drugs often get guns from what's called a straw purchase. Noakes says that's when someone buys a gun legally and then sells it to a person on the street. He says for something like a Glock, the price ranges between $300 to $500.
So a lot of times the purchase price of a firearm on the street is dependent on that firearm's history. So if it's been involved in shootings or other crimes, oftentimes the criminal in possession of that firearm is willing to get rid of it for a lesser price because they know what they've done with it.
Now, let's say you get caught with a gun you bought from the street and it gets traced back to another crime. All eyes are on you.
Oftentimes that person who now possessed that firearm is willing to get ahead of those charges. They're going to cooperate with us and tell us who they purchased the firearm or where they got it from, and we're going to trace that backwards until we get the best source we can and charge the appropriate people.
Another way criminals are getting their hands on guns is by stealing them. Nokes says if your gun was stolen, always report it. Reporting in Indianapolis, Chase Houle, 13 News.
So if you do own a firearm, make sure you write down the serial number. That makes it much easier to trace if it's stolen.
A lot of guns are stolen here in Indiana. The latest numbers between 2017 and 21 were 656 guns stolen, and that's just a tiny slice of the 45,000 guns used in crimes in Indiana during that very same time period.
More than 16,000 of those crime guns were found right here in our city.
You know, this is a really big problem that the ATF has been tracking for years now.
And you can find the links to their reports for Indiana and Indianapolis. We've got it posted for you on WTHR.com.
And breaking